perfect vacation rental listing. What does that entail on both your direct booking website? I have some thoughts there, and also on OTA platforms. I think Ben has some thoughts there. So yeah, excited to get going, and I think we've got a good topic here. So Ben, some folks coming in today, I suspect maybe haven't connected with you before, haven't chatted with you before. Would you mind maybe just a brief introduction, brief background, kind of your experience, your knowledge in the vacation rental industry, and what you're focused on today at Jetstream?
Yeah, absolutely. For the last 4 years, I've been helping to lead Jetstream as the Director of Revenue and Data. We have two parts in our business. The original part was helping resorts and hotels bridge the gap between their old technology and get onto some of the newer platforms like Airbnb and Vrbo. We have about just over 4,000 listings in that bucket. It's a sort of limited service channel manager. We layer some data on top of that. We also have another part of our business, which is really exciting. And it's like a virtual, I think we call it a VMS. We always trying to find a three-letter an acronym, virtual management service. So we work with kind of small property managers, probably less than 10 units, small boutique hotels. And we're really the ideal partner for the hands-on, boots on the ground manager who is happy to do the housekeeping, the maintenance, make the guests feel welcome, but really doesn't have a lot of interest or expertise or time to get into the guest acquisition, direct booking website, getting on the channels. We do revenue management, we do guest communications. We have about just under 200 listings where we kind of do the full service except for the boots on the ground. Before that, I took my first phone call as a reservations agent in October 1995, pre-internet, for Whistler Central Reservations. So we'd be booking ski vacations, and been talking to people ever since then. Basically, ran a small OTA called Whistler.com, and then went into the resort side, ran a property management company. We had about 300 units across three or four different lodges and then individual homes and townhomes. Went into a beautiful boutique luxury hotel at the base of the mountain. Relaunched a hotel right before COVID, and then I fell into my role at Jetstream and absolutely love working here. Great group of people and great customer base, and we get to do some really cool stuff.
You've been in Western Canada for some time, Ben, but you're not from there, right? You're from England. How did you make the
Yeah.
journey from England all the way over to Canada?
Well, the unfortunately the snow in the UK is not good. It's kind of like the I don't know, I better not say that. Kind of like the snow in Florida, I guess. I'm a mad keen, passionate skier. So I came out here traveling, kind of bumming around in my early 20s and just fell in love with this part of Canada. And my wife and I moved out in 1999 and we've been here ever since.
Nice, nice. That's awesome. I feel like there's a good pipeline in our industry of folks that are Canadian that end up, or sorry, that are British that end up in Canada. You've got Heather Bayer, you got a few other people I've met in the space. So it's all
Yeah.
good. Well, awesome, Ben. Excited to learn all about that experience because I think it's very relevant to the topic today. So, for those maybe that I know, Ben, you promoted on your LinkedIn, so maybe some people coming in, watching the recording later on, et cetera, are not familiar with me. Hello, my name is Conrad O'Connell. I'm the founder of BuildUp Bookings. We're a digital marketing agency that works specifically with, short-term rental, vacation rental managers, just like kind of Ben described over the last few minutes. In 2022, I wrote a book called Mastering Vacation Rental Marketing. More on that in a few minutes, maybe if you stick around till the end. And we've really spent, I say a lot, 9+ years. I feel like on July 1st, I'll be able to say 10+ years because that'll be the time when I feel like I kind of entered the industry in earnest. So I'm looking forward to update that here in a month or so. But for now, we'll call it 9+ years of working with vacation rental managers. And over the last 12 months, we've seen over $50 million in direct bookings, specifically on our clients' websites. So we've been able to see kind of what works. Our clients have obviously launched too many to count, new listings during that time frame. So today's topic, I think, is good to sink our teeth into because I think there's always a lot of concern and discussion and how do we get this new listing off the ground quickly? And I think Ben and I kind of picked a solid topic today. So here's kind of the agenda, the lay of the land, what we plan to talk about and discuss a little bit more today. It's going to be pretty conversational. We've got some reference slides up here and some images and graphics for you to look at, but really the content that Ben kind of put up with, we worked on putting on together. I would say here was mostly, a lot of bullet points, a lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas that Ben has seen, with his work at Jetstream, and then what I've seen a little bit on my side of things with our clients on the direct booking side of things. So building the ideal listing, Ben has kind of this theory that we talked about, which is the would I book this listing, or would I book this property? So interesting kind of discussion on that side. We came up with this idea of having a pre-flight checklist. So if you get on an airplane and you go travel somewhere, of course, the pilot's going through this pre-flight checklist to make sure everything's done safely. Fees and pricing, obviously a very big discussion point right now because a lot of people are trying to maximize their fees, but that can also hurt conversion. So there's kind of a push and pull that I think we have a lot of thoughts on that. How to launch new listings from a marketing standpoint. Maybe in the OTAs, you just launch it, but on the direct booking side, I have some thoughts on how you can get some additional attention and some additional eyeballs on new listings when you launch them. What to do if you have what one of my clients lovingly refers to as a zombie listing, which is that I've launched it. It's a good property, but it's not getting bookings. What do I do? How do I kind of reverse the favors of that listing and potentially do a little bit more? And any presentation nowadays, Ben, cannot be complete without mention of AI. It is a contractual requirement in every single presentation. So we've got some odds and ends we'll pick up here at the end on AI.
I'm
And
gonna I'm
yeah,
gonna ask you a question about AI at the end, as in that box as well, and you don't know what it is yet, so
okay.
I'm looking forward to hearing your take on it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think that's what the professionals call a teaser, Ben. So you nailed it right
Yeah.
out of the gate here on that. So excellent. Let's dive in. So, Ben, walk me through this. This was when we were putting things together. You talked about this fun idea of would I book this, and it sounds like this is something you do internally on the Jetstream side of things. So, would I book this
Yeah.
vacation listing? What does that entail? Walk me through that process.
I'm not sure if we have some folks in the webinar, but if you're comfortable with the chat and you're not feeling too shy, if you wouldn't mind just sharing, are you an individual owner? Are you
Yep.
I know a lot of Conrad's audience is vacation property managers. Do we have any hotels and resorts in the audience? Just throw that in the chat, and I'll try and talk to some of those points. I've worked across all of those different verticals. I'm actually a proud dad. My twin boys just graduated from high school at the weekend, so we actually have the two-bedroom auxiliary suite in our house where they've been kind of camped out for the last 5 years, hiding from mum and dad, and they're talking about moving away and going to university. And now I'm thinking, wow, could I be a side hustle Airbnb host? Decided,
There
do
you
I
go.
need a direct booking website? Right up to hotels of 200 plus rooms, and how to maximize those. So if anyone has a hand up, they put up and share some thoughts about who they are. But this question is, would I book this? Um, is really key. I think it's very easy to look at yourself, um, and or often with our teams, we go to the individual listings, whether it's on the direct booking site, whether it's looking on the Airbnb or Verbo or one of the channels, and then actually you need to take a step up and need to go into say, well, what would a guest do? We were just having this conversation. Airbnb, as everyone probably knows, has a program called Lux where you get a badge, just like a guest favorite badge, something like that. Well, how many people click on Lux in the filters? Should we be pushing to have some of our really nice units included in the Lux program? And that's where you start, rather than starting at your listing level, you need to start at your the search level, do what a guest would do, and really ask yourself, would I book this? Guests get very few cues in those 18 search results they see on their screen. When they do an Airbnb search, they want to go to Myrtle Beach or somewhere, you're going to get 18 hero images, 18 prices, 18 little bits of reviews, a little bit of a description, and then you get some badges if you're a super host, that kind of thing. So how do you stand out in that search? We track some things called first page impression share. Then we want to see how often out of those 18 options in a search result you get click through to your listing. And then obviously once you get to your listing page, that's really you want to optimize. You've got somebody on the hook and you want to try and reel them in and get them to convert. So the would I book this is Conrad knows this in digital marketing. There's like 1,000 different factors that could be important, and you just want to come down to what's really important to that customer, that your ideal customer in that moment.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I do. But Conrad, what do you look at?
Yeah, I actually love doing undated searches on Airbnb. Obviously, I'm, very much
Yeah,
focused on our clients and trying to help them get more direct bookings. But I think the undated search is a really valuable tool because when you go into a given market and you do that undated search on Airbnb, in my experience, Airbnb often is showing you some of the best listings, some of the top listings. So I think
yeah,
if, then you go look at the calendars and you can kind of confirm that, assessment or confirm that assumption that you might have about the quality of that listing. And needless to say, if you go there and you see very, very high rates, you see, very little availability on the calendar, you probably know you're looking at a really high performing listing, whether, it be direct listing or direct bookings, excuse me, or an OTA platform. So that's sort of my technique. And I think one thing it often reveals, Myrtle Beach would be a good example, Ben. So I like that you picked my own backyard here. Nice and easy for me to do that one. When you do an undated search in Myrtle Beach, almost always they show the view of primarily condo inventory. That's the bulk of the inventory we have here. And it's often the view of the property looking out to the ocean. So the most desirable properties here, naturally in most beach markets, it's an oceanfront listing. But because we're such more heavily on the condo side, the hotel kind of resort side, than we are in the single family home, market. Think of a market like the Outer Banks being an example of kind of the opposite, where most of the oceanfront inventory in the Outer Banks is single family homes, individual listings. Here in Myrtle Beach, it's mostly the condo. Go do an undated search on Airbnb for Myrtle Beach, and you'll often see, what does it look like when I look out let's say the kitchen or the main area, and I'm looking out to the ocean? What does my balcony look like? What's the furniture look like there? And then how nice is that view, towards the beach? And I think if I was, and we do have a local client that we work with, it's kind of like that's that money shot, or that's that thumbnail, or that hero shot, kind of like you were referring to a few minutes ago. How do we make that as appealing as possible? Maybe that's upgrading the furniture outside, which is not often on everybody's checklist in every single market. We want to have comfortable and, clean and ready to access, of course, outdoor furniture in almost every listing. But in this particular market, I think it might make it more of a difference. So if you've got the very cheap, low quality plastic chair sitting out there with this $1 million view, it's kind of like you're doing that photo probably a little bit of a disservice. If you got a really nice premium outside chair that's nice and comfortable in that photo, I think it makes it more appealing. So that's one example I could point to on the thumbnail. But I'm sure you've done lots of testing around thumbnails as well. Love to hear your perspective on thumbnails, whether it's that idea or other ones when it comes to the click itself.
And
Yeah.
and again, this is interesting, and this is why you want to try and step into your potential customer's shoes. Is sometimes you want to yin when everyone else is yanging, right? If you have 19 pictures of looking at the view to the ocean, or 17 pictures, and your picture is the sunset picture, or your picture is the dining table, maybe in that scenario, that's a better hero image. Um, I saw a great down in Florida, near Orlando, near Disney. There's just like a gazillion different listings, and those first search result pages, you got 18 pools. Well, there was one just had a bottle of wine and two glasses. On that search results, you're not trying to close the deal. You're just trying to get a click. Sometimes it's easy to think I have to tell an entire story in one photo and a tiny bit of data. No, you just want to get the click. If you can get your click conversion from I think our percentage is about 10% across the board average. You can get it from 1 in 10 to 1.5 in 10. Suddenly, your chances of increasing your revenue are so much stronger, and that just as true on your direct booking site. When you have your product listing, if you've got 18 units and they're all pretty similar, you don't want to have 18 identical pictures. In my opinion, you want to mix it up a little bit in your product portfolio lead pictures, so you can show a little bit of the destination story in one picture and a little bit of a room quality story in another.
I think that's a great point, actually. And one thing I think that does happen a lot is that, and I understand why folks do this, and this kind of comes up in the poll. The majority of the folks listening in today, Ben, kind of are that professional host or property manager, persona. Many of our clients kind of fit that bucket as well. Is that when you're in that situation, you often find yourself trying to be very fair to the owner, which I think is always a tough thing to stomach sometimes. Because let's say you have a property that's not doing well, that owner trusted you with their $500,000 to $1 million property. Let's be honest, nowadays that's what a quality vacation rental is going to cost you if you're going to go buy it, and list it out there in pretty much any premier destination, whether it be in the U.S. or Canada. And so they put a lot of money, their own money and their own kind of investment into that. And then you probably sold them on the idea that I can manage this property, I'm going to get it bookings. Then if you're not doing that, you feel bad. Like that's a natural feeling. I mean, if you have any, I guess ethics, or if you want to deliver with that person, you're not delivering for them. A common thing I see over and over again, though, Ben, is people going, okay, I'm going to go ahead and put you at the top of the search results, even though you have no bookings. And sometimes I think that can be, to your point there, almost a bad thing, because we're now putting maybe what might be a subpar product or a subpar property at the top of the listings, we're going and putting our thumb on the scale, if you will, showing that listing up there. Whereas other properties we have are doing better, but we want booking on this one. And it can kind of create this like tail chasing scenario. I've seen this over and over again in my career of we're trying to get this property listed and booked and we're trying to get it out there and people just aren't biting. We're putting it out
Yeah.
there, they're seeing it, they're not booking it for whatever reason. And it can become, very frustrating, obviously, on both sides. The owner side, I understand their frustration, and the property manager side, where they feel like, hey, I'm getting all these eyeballs, but it's not converting. So what are
Yeah.
some things when you do these audits on your side, Ben? What are some things that you see that maybe aren't obvious at first glance, but then you do some digging? I think you've already said one, which is like zagging when other people are zigging, if you will, on the photo itself. But once you get in that listing, what are some other things that come to mind that are like, common mistakes that you're able to clean up and improve the results from?
I think, especially in the resort side of things, in the condo product, I'll talk to that first of all, is getting the balance right between your ideal customer and the story you want to tell them in those first five images that kind of dominate at the top of the page on whichever OTA or direct site you have. Um, are you telling the story of the destination? Are they coming to Myrtle Beach to golf? Are you telling the story of the resort? It's great for kids and it's got a kids pool, adults pool, and a wave machine. Or are you telling the story of the individual room? Out of the box, there's sort of one best practice I think on Airbnb, and it's to show the living room picture if it's got a nice couch. But actually, you want to really think about what you're trying to sell in terms of that. On the individual homes, it's a little bit the same. It's like, am I going inside? Am I going outside? I love your point about the view away from the listing. In where I live, we have mountains all around us, so we don't get a proper sunset. So I am literally obsessed when I go on vacation about finding somewhere that's unobstructed facing west, hoping for a sunset. So at the DARM conference we were at
Mhm.
last year,
Yeah.
I missed the last 30 minutes of every day because I was running out to the beach to watch the sun go down. And I was like, why isn't everybody else out here? And they're like, South
Repeat every
Florida
day.
is like, we get that every day. So it's really kind of thinking about what's important to your clients. One of the uh, things we find in the content is, and we experiment with this, we don't have the right answer. I'll be honest, yet, and the goalposts keep changing. But there's times when you want to lead with uh, uh, a teaser to build intrigue and can get people to keep on digging into, oh, this sounds nice, let's keep going. And then there's times where you just want to give people the facts.
Yeah.
So, when I see listings, and we have some listings like this still, unfortunately, and it says queen bed in the master, second bedroom, you've got a queen or two twins. Well, is that the queen bed or two twins? You got two teenagers. That could be the deciding factor between the holiday of a lifetime and an absolute disaster. So, trying to some part of your listing, you're gonna really want to have certainty. Um, Make sure you're spelling out pet friendly or any restrictions, those home truths. One tip that I do want to share, and I've been doing this since Booking.com came to the hotel in 2016 and told me about, they got this thing called computers and AI that does lots of stuff all at once and does lots of testing. Booking.com chooses your pictures when you list with them, whether you list with Booking.com or not. But if you do a search for your destination on Booking.com, they're running thousands of multivariate experiments on their website every single day. They're trying to figure out what picture in their search results makes Booking.com the most money.
Mm.
So go take a look at those in my market, my local market, where I was a manager in Whistler. There's like this change from summer to winter.
Mm.
And it was always a big talking point. Do you change at the end of March when there's still snow on the ground and start selling summer? Because it's, you're selling to people who haven't booked yet, who are thinking future. And when do you put the first snowy picture on for winter sales? And when I was running Whistler.com, I would be advocating for the day after Labor Day.
Mm.
And some of my colleagues in marketing were like, well, what about the fall colors? And I was like, well, the fall colors is 8% of our revenue. So and the ADR is down, 70% compared to our Christmas rate. So let's put a winter picture up, and you normally um, ending up somewhere in between. But Booking.com is doing that in real time every single day based on their conversion metrics. So it's always good to go steal a little look at Booking.com website, even if it's other listings, and you get a flavor of what seems to be driving their conversion.
Yeah, I love that. Though this wasn't in our outline, but one more Booking.com thing I'll drop in there is Booking.com is the best, I think, OTA platform, far better, I think, than Airbnb in this respect at showing, at showing urgency. So the idea of
Right.
you go on a Booking.com listing, you see a specific room or a villa or a condo, whatever the case may be, and they allude to the fact that we only have seven left, we only have four left of this room type. Or if you're looking at a property, it might be, hey, 75 other people have looked at this property in the past 24 hours. All these little, again, social cues or things to kind of create more urgency in getting that booking. There's one thing where it's like the more desirable the property, the more people know intuitively that they have to book far in advance. And that's the battle that I think a lot of folks out there are fighting right now, is they're seeing maybe a little bit of a slowdown in demand. But what's many of our clients are seeing right now is that the demand is okay, but it's all last minute. And that causes lots of, stress and anxiety, I think, on the marketing and sales and revenue side of things, because you go, is that booking actually going to fill in that I have, the opening I have in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks that's quite severe? Is that going to fill in? I think urgency is probably the best antidote that we have to that problem of trying to give people a reason to book as early as possible, let's say it that way. And then once we get their eyeballs on that listing page, anything we can do, they're on the fence. There's so many people on the fence. If we can just do one thing to nudge them over, to Ben's point about photography, imaging, I think that's great. On my side, it would be urgency. How can I get someone to feel like if they don't book it now, they're going to lose it? That's kind of what I want that feeling to have in their mind subconsciously. And if I can do that, I'm going to get, more results and more bookings from it. So, yeah, all good
Yeah.
stuff there. Excellent. So Ben, let's turn the page slightly, just to kind of keep on time. And you had talked a little bit about this idea of kind of this I called it a pre-flight checklist, but maybe it's a pre-launch checklist. So let's say, one of the partners that you work with over there at Jetstream says, great, we're just acquired, some new listings, or we're going to go launch 10 new listings in Whistler next week. What's kind of the pieces of the process to actually go through and kind of creates this cycle from your perspective?
Yeah, we built this because there's so many thousands of little things you can change, and it's actually quite important to figure out what's important, the most important thing to change next or to look at next. And there's definitely a order of doing this. When we started doing this, years and years ago, we'd focus on listing quality. We'd see poor performance, or we'd start with the photos and start with the descriptions. And really, in the last 4 years, we've taken a more of a whole process approach. So uh, this is what we call our optimization wheel, and it runs in a very specific order. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see the numbers on this graphic. So the first thing is supply, supply, supply. In our world with our big resort clients, they connect to us via PMS or a CRS system. Are they sending us the data that they should be sending us? Are we receiving the data that they think they're sending us? And uh, let's get the supply right. Quite often, we haven't had a booking in a week, and then we go look at the supply, and it's like, well, the supply's been switched off. Oh, oops, I switched it off, or you know, Travel Click switched it off, or Synexis, or the CRS, or the PMS. The second thing is in the demand channels active. Always be checking your demand channels. So Airbnb can pull you down for a compliance check, a customer service check. Do you have the right permit? Is there something going on? Did it get flagged? And you wouldn't believe how many times you just have to say, are we on? So there's a great Chrome extension for this. You just put all of your URLs into a little Google sheet, and then you open up this Chrome extension, you paste the URLs in, and it opens like 36 Chrome tabs in your browser, which might slow your computer down, but then you don't have to go in and type in every link, and you can just really quickly see if they are alive and working, or if you get like a error or for redirect. So once you got supply and demand, we spent a lot of time in the last year and a half, which has really helped our growth in making sure that the prices are right. And I'm coming from a little bit of the hotel and resorts, but with our fully managed partners or our exclusive partners, the supply is as easy as, have I got the calendar back from the owner?
Hmm.
You're the property managers here who are reliant on owners. making sure we get the calendars back. A lot of places didn't used to give you a calendar till 6 months out, and you had to go and show them that there was tons of demand at 12 months, and tons of people wanted to rebook at the end of their vacation. So can you get them out further? In the pricing, in the exclusive world, it's like, what's our comp set? Are we in the right place? Are we in the sweet spot? Really, that's where I spent time doing revenue management. If you were sold out last summer, you don't want to be the first one out of the 10 competitors to sell this summer too cheap. But I tell you what, if it's slow season October and only 1 out of 10 sold, you might want to be that one, right? And push some, shoulder season inventory. And then the final step in the wheel, which we don't even really address until we've got certainty in supply, demand, and rates, is to then dive into the listing quality of photos and reviews and descriptions.
It's funny, Ben, because I feel like a lot of people go to that fourth one right away. In
We
terms of,
did. We did
yeah,
that for years, and
yeah.
it didn't serve us well.
And the first one is something that I'll admit I'm not an expert in every single PMS out there. There's
Yeah,
folks where they consult on that. That's all they do. And
yeah.
you should probably reach out to those people because that's all they do all day long. And maybe sometimes I'll be honest, I take that for granted. I assume the PMS is working
Hmm.
properly, but we shouldn't assume that, should we? You know what they say about
Yeah.
assumptions, it gets you in some trouble.
Hmm.
So I like that idea a lot. One thing I've seen, there's a client that we work with where on one PMS, for example, when it goes to Airbnb platform, the rooms are not categorized or organized. It's just like the big gallery of photos, and I think that a
Hmm.
lot of PMSs work that way. Whereas some other clients we work with, they go through and they can actually set up those categories where it's like master bedroom one, bedroom two,
Yeah.
living area, that sort of thing. And I didn't think it was a big deal. I was like, oh, it's a nice to have. It's not a need to have. And then I saw a client fix that. And then they're like, oh man, like Airbnb has taken off for us, since that one change. And it was kind of more of a combination, maybe I would argue, of number one and number four together in a way, because it was like
Yeah.
improving listing quality, but it was a technical change on their PMS that actually created that opportunity. So I imagine those are somewhat correlated, right? Number one and number four might have some direct correlation to when you go and fix little, hiccups and technical issues.
Yeah. And it's just that, going back to would I book this?
Mhm.
Some PMSs will have an option where you can set your hero images, or even set your first five images in the gallery. But then sometimes one of the OTAs won't update. So there's certain versions, like Airbnb and Verbo, have just done big uh, API upgrades. We've just been writing to those in the last couple of months. So there's all these tiny little changes, and it's unintended consequences. So, maybe something got toggled on, toggled off, switched on, switched off. I was working with a client, and they had a beautifully, beautiful listing in Park City, and $17,000 a night. And the hero image was a picture of the toilet. Um, and that wasn't intended, but that was just how it had come out. So again, you never know in this wheel, um, where the big win is going to be. But my experience is you start in this order, because by the time you get to good supply, good demand, open, good pricing, you can really then justify spending time on, tweaking content and images.
Yeah, yeah, I think and I assume what happens too, the larger the client, the more this can kind of become a little bit of an afterthought too, right? The more inventory that comes
Hmm.
online, hey, we're trying to manage 200 listings. I've seen some of the clients that we work with, Ben, they'll have one person responsible for this. And actually most
Hmm.
of the time, it's one person who's splitting their time between doing, let's say, listings and reservations. So they might have the phone ringing
Yeah.
off the hook, or they've got guest issues they're dealing with. And then, oh yeah, by the way, Jane Doe, John Doe, we got a new listing. Go ahead and get that thing pushed out on the OTA platforms. And the photos just came in yesterday. Go ahead and launch it. And he or she might be doing that in very, very few minutes, while they're trying to juggle other things. So I think it's a good call out to talk about the fact that do you have a cadence for this? Maybe that's my final question on this topic, Ben. Is it like quarterly? Is this a monthly thing? Let's say the numbers are good. There's no red flags that you're seeing. Is it just still something that just you go back and review regularly as well?
We've got a meeting in right after this one with a partner with 145 resorts, doing incredibly well. And I pulled out one of the best performing listings, and I was taking a screenshot for my report. And the hero image is still covered in snow. It's up in Lake Placid, and that was like a red. It's like, now, why is that? Maybe we're yinning when the rest of the
Yeah.
competition are yanging, or something. But by the time we get to meet them, that photo, we measure this every single week. So
Wow.
we're looking at our conversion metrics en masse. One of the conversations that our team are having around AI is how do we stack? We got way too much information
Hmm.
to really be able to you know spot every single issue. But we're trying to measure at least once a week, and then if we see a listing suddenly have a drop in its search result to listing view conversion week over week, then it's like yikes, we're something slipped. Sometimes it's a beautiful, somebody's just launched 10 new listings on Airbnb down the street, and you're not aware, right? So sometimes it's factors out of your control. Other times it's something you missed a promotion in your tool, or your dynamic pricing tool is uh, you know, yeah, drunken some funny juice or something, and is throwing out prices from a signal or something, right? You haven't changed the right setting. So we're trying to look at this every week, but oh my, we've got a long way to go still. It's a lot of work, but it does pay off.
Yeah, I think speaking of like the best AI use cases, it seems like the early thing that everyone has grasped onto in our world has been messaging. Oh, that this is going to be the way that we message guests, and we save so much
Hmm.
time doing that. Okay, fine. Like we can put that to the side for the time being.
Yeah,
That's not a topic of today's discussion, but
yeah.
I think the summarization of large bits of information, looking for anomalies, to your point, is probably one of the
Hmm.
best AI use cases. Because I'll give you an example from the SEO world that I live in, and I know you have some SEO knowledge as well, Ben. But
Yeah.
taking a list of, let's say, 5,000 URLs and mapping redirects for them. When I was at IC&D years ago, I had to do redirects for a large property manager up in the Outer Banks by hand, and I kid you not, it took me over 80 hours to do these redirects by hand,
Oh my
one by
goodness.
one, finding the new
Yeah.
URL, pasting it in, going the old URL. I did something not too dissimilar about a month ago with Gemini in probably 8 to 10 minutes. What might have took me 80 hours because I was giving it all this information on URLs, all the information on the new URL structure with the page title intact. And I said, find me the most similar URL and match it up in the spreadsheet. If you're not sure, just leave it blank. And it got 95% or something of it just in one shot. While I mean, I was watching it do it, but I could have literally just like gone, got a coffee, got a soda, came back, and it would have been done. And I was like, that took me 3 weeks at the last agency that I worked at. So yeah, I think AI spotting trends. So if you download some sort of report from your PMS, week
Yeah.
over week, to your point of like number of bookings made, views, like all the metrics you were
Hmm.
talking about earlier, and you
Yeah.
say, you know what, I do have limited time. Just show me the five worst, which had the five worst
Hmm.
drop offs, and then you go work on those five. That's probably a good way to
Yeah.
kind of like time box yourself and use AI to your advantage instead of going and pouring through a spreadsheet with 8,000 numbers in it that you probably can't immediately look at and know what the issue is. So
Yeah. I mean, for an example, this
yeah.
wheel for one listing, we're into 45 minutes to an hour of human time. And what we're learning now is that kind of the same thing for every listing. So that's on our roadmap for next
Wow.
year is to how do we, reduce that time from 45 minutes to an hour to maybe 5 minutes. And so our humans can actually really spend the time adding the value, not doing the detective work.
Yeah, I love that. I couldn't agree more with that concept. So, yeah, let's talk about launching that new property in the OTA. Maybe it's similar to this wheel kind of thing that we talked about
Hmm.
a second ago, right? But when you're launching a new property, let's assume we've got some of the base technology in a good shape. We know it's going to launch properly. Is there anything special that you do? I know one thing that comes to mind. I see some of our clients doing this is, hey, the first few guests on Airbnb, they often encourage you to do a discount or promotion. It's a new listing, no reviews. That obviously can breed maybe not as much trust as the listing that's more established. I'm just curious, kind of your process on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Did I do a little
Mhm.
chat GPT?
Yeah. I think we got some
This
we got
is
some good graphics for the
thank
talking points here.
thank goodness for chat GPT and building graphics, because oh my, I'm the world's worst artist, and I just type this in and say, 3 words in a bubble box, and hey presto, here it
Highlight the
is.
scene. I love
Um
it.
these are my three you know couldn't resist the USP for your ICP. Yeah, unique selling point for your ideal customer
I like that.
persona. Trying to really drill down what that is before you start. And yeah, it might change, and you might have multiple persona types. But if you got bunk beds in the second bedroom, then you might just want to skew a little more family. And if you got two queen beds, you might want to, ham up the double master concept in your descriptions. The new listing discount is a really good way of like merchandising on Airbnb and Vrbo, and different direct booking sites is probably not as strong as you mentioned on Booking.com and Expedia, but the merchandising does make a difference. That strike through really does make a perception difference. It's really worthwhile. It's hard because you worry for your brand that you're always on sale, if you're always having a discount, always having a promotion. But in our business, people only come shopping once a year, potentially, unless you have a lot of, repeat booking, repeat trips. So in their mind, your sale is new. For your marketing department, they might be tired of the same old, yeah, locals discount, stay 5 nights, get a discount. And then the other thing is, this is going to be exactly opposite to, I think, the next slide, but progress, not perfection, is get it out there, get it done. I see probably from the revenue management work I do, I think the biggest mistake for new owners and new listing launches is there's the hang up on getting the perfect price. Right now, when you launch a new listing, Airbnb and Vrbo, Booking.com, all the OTAs are momentum machines. They will reward every time they get some money in their pocket, in their guest fees or their commissions. That's what they're going to reward. There's whole YouTube channels about different tips and tricks to optimize. But my bottom line is, if we're giving them money, they'll give us bookings. So you want to just keep on moving and setting the rate and fine tuning the rate. If you're running rentals and you're less than 50% occupied in your main busy seasons, you shouldn't even worry about it. You've got to get full. I definitely have come from you need to get busy and get good in terms of your service. Then you can work on your rates, because now you have reputation and reviews. And then the last piece of the pie, once you are busy with high rates, is to make sure that you've got as many of those bookings coming in direct. That's my progression. And I think a lot of people start with, I want the really high rates first, and I don't like paying commissions. And what happens, you get stuck, with this unrealistic expectation. And then Airbnb and Vrbo, Booking.com go, oh, this guy isn't helping my business. They're going to page 17. So progress, not perfection in the pricing. Get it out there, and you're probably going to take a few rates where you could have got a few more dollars. But next month, next season, next year, that's going to come back and pay dividends for you. We see some of our listings have hundreds of thousands of search views. Because they've just become this momentum machine. When you've got 1,000+ listings, which are a lot of the destinations, and you're on the first page impression rate over 40%, you are doing something good.
I love that idea. One thing I've explained it before, Ben, is this idea of like, presumably the owner of this property, let's say it is a property manager who's promoting that listing, what is in this for the long haul? They're not in this for the next 60 days. Like, hopefully they're in this for the next 6 to 10 years of owning this property, owning this asset, that sort of thing, right? So let's say our first 5 bookings are, to your point, let's say we sold them for too little. Oh no, we thought we could have got X per night and we instead sold it for X minus 30%. Who cares? Right? Like, we're going to get 600 more bookings, 1,000 more bookings on that listing, hopefully, if we have a long relationship with that homeowner. If you were, to your point, if you were too slow, or if you weren't at the rate that we wanted to, it doesn't matter. It's a fixable issue. You can just simply raise the pricing. So I think that's you described it better than I did, but that's kind of how I've thought about it before, which is like, when things are moving, we can put more advertising, we can put more eyeballs behind something. But at the end of the day, every customer is looking for value, whether it is a luxury listing or a bargain basement listing. Every customer is looking for value. So they look at your listing and go, wow, I maybe the person who's a little bit below that would upgrade and say, I'm willing to pay $100 more a night for this one. I'm willing to pay $225 more per night for this listing. And you get that momentum going. I think you described it well, as like, that's the good way to think about it. So I love that. That's great. Yeah. Awesome. So fees and show pricing. So turning the page here a little bit more, Ben, maybe I put it in here 3 times with my little ChatGPT graph. Fees. It's like, what's the real estate investors say? It's all about location, location, location. I think they're right in some concept, but nowadays it seems like fees are obviously can we escape them? I feel like we can't escape them, Ben. And it's sort of like, they say death and taxes are inevitable. I feel like in our space, we could add a third one in: death, taxes, and fees are inevitable. So what's kind of the current landscape from your perspective on the OTA side of I got to charge all these fees. That's where my profitability comes from. But I know at Airbnb, or in Airbnb, for example, my understanding is all the fees get run into one line item. That can be kind of messy. Yeah, like
Yeah.
give me the lowdown on fees from your perspective today on Jetstream.
Yeah, I mean, this has changed so much. When I was running an OTA, Whistler.com in the thousands, we used to hate when people added fees on, and we thought it was deceptive, and you didn't find out about the fees till the last minute. They just got hidden with the taxes. And then when I ran property managers and hotels in the 2010s, it was like these fees are keeping us afloat. Um, and actually, it doesn't seem to matter. You know, people just it's the fees and taxes. I'm going to pay what I'm going to pay, and that kept us, after the big recession, 08, 09, 2010. Some of those fees were critical to keeping our business going. Um, the big change that just happened is that in North America or in the US, May the 12th, the new law came in that said if there's a fee and it's mandatory, it has to be displayed in that price box and that search result box. It can't be kind of slid in later and wrapped into the taxes. So in terms of conversion, fees used to be a conversion winner because you used to drop the fees in at the last minute, and you've shown your spouse the listing you're going to book, and you're committed and you're down the funnel. That doesn't happen anymore. It's a lot more upfront pricing, so you really have to worry more about the overall price per night rather than the nightly rate, which was how search results used to present. So it kind of I think the game is up on fees a little bit, but as a property manager, they may still be essential to your business. How you split fees with your owners, whether it's a management company fee or it's a shared fee, is really important. So I think we're going to see lots of scratching of heads in reservation departments and accounting departments as rates come in, and making sure that the right fees go into the correct buckets, whether it's a resort fee, a city improvement fee, a certain tax, a mandatory housekeeping fee. And then you have to make sure that you've updated your listings to reflect which fees are included, when they're going to get collected. At Jetstream, we just wrote to 3,500 listings and said, you got to include your fees in the price. You can break them out as a separate line item in your tech, and we will remit them back to you as separate line items, but you can't kind of hide it in the content. One of our AI projects that we just finished last week was to update 3,500 listing contents, short and long descriptions, to pull out any mention of mandatory fees payable later to say this is all included. We used a large language model for that. It took less than an hour and cost $67 in processing fees. So in terms of a labor saving, that was quite substantial as well. So feed's going to be really interesting. If you see Airbnb and Vrbo, they're merchandising heavily right now in their searches, because it's essentially a lot of places have just gone up by 5%, 7%, $28 a night in that kind of sticker shock price to the guest. And maybe that's why we've seen conversion slow down. And maybe as people get used to the prices, oh yeah, I would have paid that fee anyway when I got there. Hopefully we'll see a bit of pickup for the summer.
Yeah, I think that, I've been an advocate, honestly, been in the past for fees, and I know it's like admitting, I don't know, it's like admitting you have some dark secret or something like that. But
Yeah,
we've worked with clients over the years. I convinced a client this year, believe it or not, Ben, to add cleaning fees. She did not have cleaning fees for almost 10 years
yeah,
of her business. And this isn't like a hotel or resort property. This is a
yeah.
traditional, cabin rental market. She
Hmm.
never did cleaning fees, was terrified to add them in, just absolutely,
Yeah,
scared. Hey, this is going to kill my conversions, et cetera, et cetera. Long story short, she just put a simple, I think it's $69 memory serves cleaning fee in there. And she's done over $10,000 in cleaning fees this year. She wasn't going to collect otherwise. And
incredible.
yeah,
Yeah,
her profitability is obviously up significantly from that, because she can now actually pay the cleaner from that and then not have to take it out of her commission like
yeah,
she was doing before. So I think there's very few people that are under feeing. That's one of them, that client that I mentioned, but the majority, of course, are trying to slide in everything possible. I do think it's a bit of maybe a black mark in our industry at times. People do get tired of
hmm,
these things. Well, VRMA is in Vegas this year, and I sort of, whenever I think Vegas, the second thing I think of, other than the casinos, is, oh, when I get there, I'm gonna have to pay a $50 per night resort fee for stuff that I'm not even using because I'm at the conference all day. But that's kind
it's
of a common,
crazy.
yeah, kind of a
I
common
know
tactic there in Vegas. Yeah.
back in 2011, we switched our property management company, and we said, hey, owners, it's no longer 37% management fee. It's down to 20 something, and the guests are going to pay for cleaning.
Okay.
And in
Yeah.
terms of owner acquisition, like that was it was the good old days of 30 plus fees, but it included the housekeeping costs. And when we analyzed housekeeping costs, it was like, well, on an average reservation, the housekeeping cost nets out of like 12% of the booking value.
Mhm.
All right, so we've just have a much more compelling owner story because the housekeeping fees have been pushed to the guest. Um, and that was, my boss's idea. And I was like, how can we make money at 25%? Well, it's like, it's the same money as 37% when you're paying for housekeeping. And I was like, really? And, it was awesome for owner acquisition because, the big company down the street was still charging 35-40% management fee, and we're coming in at 20 something. And I think most of the vacation rental industry is now doing that fee structure where, it's not wrapped into your management fee to pay for housekeeping.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think one thing that's really critical, I think, with all fees, and obviously you have a lot more control over this on a direct booking site, you have less on the OTA side, is just explaining your fee. I think if you do have a fee,
Hmm.
I think what people don't want to see is like admin fee, or like
Yeah.
just a booking fee of some kind, obviously. And even Airbnb describes theirs, on there they say it's like a service fee, that's what they call it. But they say this is to provide you with our platform and 24/7 guest support and these three things, which
Hmm.
we could dispute a different day, the quality of those things. Maybe that's probably
Yeah.
a separate webinar topic where we get in more trouble with the folks over at Airbnb. But at least they explain it, right? And I think when
Yeah.
we have clients that are introducing these fees, I think a cleaning fee is obviously very self-explanatory. But we have clients that are introducing maybe a platform fee or a booking fee. I'm like, explain what
Hmm.
it is. Describe what it actually is that they're getting out of it, and they're not going to be thrilled by it. Obviously they're
Hmm.
not excited the fee is there. But if you give some context, it's better than just like we have a client who did a payment processing fee a little while ago, and they got more complaints about that from repeat guests than almost any other fee they added in there because it's like, what are you talking about? I paid you with a credit card last year, and now I'm paying you with a credit card this year, and there's this 2% processing fee that I'm paying for my credit card. It's like they saw it as unfair on the guest side. So it's hard for me to disagree with that. Yeah, I don't know if a ton more to add in here other than just like I think the goal is to explain them all the best possible. Obviously charge as little as you need to, as it were, but probably also be willing to do some testing. Maybe be willing to get rid of
Hmm.
the fees for a little while, see if that improves conversions. Be willing to maybe test a little bit higher. Again, every once in a while I meet a client who's not charging any fees, and I kind of have to talk them into it. And then once we do, we see some positive gains there. So I guess if I could think of anything here, Ben, I think of like medicine. If you got a headache, two Excedrin will do me a lot of good in that scenario. But you certainly don't want to take 10 of them. That might cause
Yeah,
an issue. And
exactly.
you also
Yeah.
don't want the headache. So it's like we got to have some fees in there, but we don't want to overdo them either. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All good. So yeah, you mentioned this. Sorry, we had some additional graphics in here. The game is up on these fees, right? And I'm sorry, I'm doing a bad job, Ben, here of running the slides, but this is obviously a pop-up that you see. This is Verbo, I believe, but oh,
Yeah,
maybe it's Expedia. It's honestly from this screenshot, total sidebar here. It's hard to tell if this is Verbo or Expedia because they look so similar nowadays. But
they
I think
do.
this is a similar one as well. Yeah. Exactly. So let's talk about that new listing thing. We kind of touched on it earlier. And you've got, you mentioned a few minutes ago this idea of the momentum machine. Is there anything, maybe because we already hit that, let's go this direction. Actually, I take that back. And I'm
Okay.
looking at my time here as well, Ben, and trying to be aware of the fact that we've got folks for a few more minutes here. So a zombie listing. Let's say we did everything you described a few minutes ago. We launched that property. We think we've got the tech right. We think we've got the pricing pretty fair. We believe we have things in good place, and yet it's not seeing a pickup. It's not getting that momentum that we desire a few minutes ago. What's kind of your solve there? What are some things that you've done before to kind of like get that listing out of neutral if it is stuck in neutral? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, if I think the next slide,
Mhm.
I really went crazy on Chat GPT with a couple of slides here. We launched some technology a year and a half ago that made our rate plan integration with our resorts so much better, and so suddenly we were getting much better, more accurate promotional promotion representation into the big channels. So suddenly our pricing came right down on the sweet spot, on the money. Resorts with like, 61 bedrooms to sell every night. They're selling them everywhere else. We still weren't getting any conversion. So we uh, uh, we have this thing where we call it PRP or CPR or whatever the thing, content pricing and reviews, and that's really running through that wheel, make sure everything is good. We get into the thing, and then we complete the wheel, and we're still not getting anything. And then this really made us think, why? you know, why don't Airbnb and Verbo know that we're the best game in town? So I think the next slide uh, is uh, is our three strategies for our CPR content, pricing, and reviews. So the 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 jug of milk for 10 cents at the back of the grocery store
Yeah.
in the UK, it was always a loaf of bread was 10p, 10 pence.
Yeah.
And they'd drag you all the way through the grocery store. Um, this one is the hardest for our revenue managers and our account managers to sell to partners. What we say is take that ugly Tuesday, Wednesday. You've got an empty resort. You're not going to sell it anyway. It's off season. Just make it the cheapest deal in town. Get it booked, get it booked, get it booked. You're gonna make a loss if you can cover $1 on your marginal costs. If you can pay for the shampoo, it's a win. It's not going to cover anybody's salaries. It's not going to cover the hydro bill or the lease on the office. What you're trying to do is put the powders onto the body, onto the patient, and just give it an electric shock, right? And what that does is that Vobo and Airbnb wake up and go, "Oh wow, yeah, we made some money just then," you know. And then they will start to get you back on the front page. So that's a pricing uh, tool, and that works tremendously well, and is extremely hard to get any of our customers to embrace. But when they do, it works great. The second one
Could I,
is,
I'm sorry, Ben,
uh,
could I interrupt you right
John.
there? I have one quick question. So I have a client who has talked about this concept at length, and he has a day
Yeah,
counter on his listings. So he
yeah,
goes, if I go a certain number of days where I don't get a booking on a listing, it sort of triggers this red flag, this alert. I think Wheelhouse has that functionality, by the way, one of the pricing software is out
oh
there.
yeah.
Is there any feedback you've had on that? Is it like if you go cold 10 days in a row, are you ripping out this strategy and seeing if that needs to go? What's your experience on that, real quick?
Yeah, we when we look at our we look at every week bookings last 7 days
Hmm.
at a property manager level, then at a resort level, then at individual listing level, and and as soon as we see a zero, we start to get a little bit twitchy about doing that. But I love that idea. Is like you go dark. Wheelhouse. We use Wheelhouse on our when we do our pricing and revenue management, and we have literally the last date booked.
Hmm.
And when I meet with our revenue managers, it's like, well, sort it by the last date booked from furthest away. And it's like, okay, wow, that one hasn't had a booking in 3 weeks. What are we going to do here? And that's sometimes you have to have a conversation with the owner. But yeah, that's that days since last booking is a great idea.
Yeah. This particular property manager I'm referring to, his number is 10, by the way. You know, if it ever
Great.
reaches 10 days in his particular market, he's noticed that's when it becomes, going back to this idea, that's when it becomes a zombie listing, is when it gets that
Yeah.
10-day mark. Before that he doesn't worry so much, but when it gets to 10, he rips off the cord. So sorry I interrupted you, but yeah.
No, no. Well, I mean, we got a resort partner that had a revenue strategy to drive higher ADR. And they maybe pushed it a little bit too far. And now heading into their, big booking season window, their cold first page impressions on Airbnb and Vrbo are 50% less than they were same week last year.
Hmm.
So now we're like, you're less occupied and you get less eyeballs, and now you're fighting what is, in Southern Florida, a pretty tough market right now. So it's tough. The second one here is with you can have a beautiful listing with great pricing, but if that last review is a 1 out of 5, you gotta do something with that review. Now, it's a dark science removing reviews from platforms. Um, but the other way to do it is just to flush them away. And the only way you can flush away a bad review is with good reviews.
Mhm.
So that is the other thing. If we have a stinking review, whether it's justified, and sometimes it is, things don't go perfect every time. You just got to fill that listing, try and get five out of fives. And yeah, your average is still going to take a hit, but when that person is in decision-making mode, they've got the family around them, that's probably the time when they open up the reviews. And if the first one says bed bugs, you're probably in trouble. And we had at the hotel, we had a full-on code red bed bugs review response process
Mhm.
to try and remove the review. And if you couldn't remove a bad review, then it was like, absolutely, we got to get this one bedroom out of you. We've got to get five great ones.
Mm.
And then the last one is just into the photography. I think that's my attempt at a sunset picture. Uh,
Oh,
that's
good.
that was my chat GPT of take a sunset shot.
Yeah. No, I like that. I think those are three solid ones and the exact same process that I go through, by the way. So, Ben, we're coming up against it. So that AI
Yeah.
question that you teased at the beginning, let's get the payoff. What's that AI question
Okay.
we need to go through here?
So having just run an AI a tool that we built in house to
Mhm.
update content for 3,500 listings that worked really well, over 95% success. Now it's got me thinking, you used to design a listing for humans. What does it look like? And I don't really read the text. Certainly not till, I start reading the text if I'm going to get into trouble if I book something that's not good enough for my wife. Um, but look at the pictures and then you read the text and then search engines came along where you got to build the text so it's SEO friendly.
Mhm.
And now we have these AI crawlers and AI agents. Are we now like, should we now just like have another 1,000 words of content so AI crawlers can get to know you? Like, how do you build for an AI SEO?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think anyone who tells you they have the answer right now, I think is probably selling you a load of nonsense, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
because I think it's very much in the air right now. I would say it's rare for us to look at a client website and go, "Oh, they've got everything covered." Like they've covered
Mhm.
every question that a guest may have. They've covered every single nook and cranny as far as information goes. So I think in the world of AI, if anything, it should be easy to overeducate, index, create
Mhm.
more content versus less. And the cost of producing content has gone down 100x in the last 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Imagine you were hiring a freelancer. Imagine they were in their office, in your office, they had a salary
Mhm.
and okay, it's your job to go and write content on the website. Nowadays, we can do that in a handful of prompts and click a few buttons and get back, very good stuff. Is it perfect? No, but neither was the freelancer, to be honest with you. Trust me, I've hired many of them over the years. So they weren't perfect either. Of course, everyone will, talk about the death of that role, which is a bummer, but that's the world we're living in. So yeah, it's hard for me to justify, I would say, like going and trimming back content or trimming back words, assuming that they are valuable information and that you're giving people the context they want. So, for example, maybe I give you an example here to come to a close on that one would be sample travel itineraries on a direct booking site. We
Mhm.
have all the unlimited space in the world. Could we not, for each listing, have a little section underneath the property description, and it goes, "This trip is perfect for guys' golf trips. You and I are going to go to Vegas, and we're going to go golfing before the
Yeah.
DRMA. That sounds fun. Let's do that." And then at the bottom of
No,
that, it
it
gives
does.
some feedback on
Yeah.
what that might look like. Or let's say you go with your wife, and it's the perfect romantic couples getaway. This property,
Yeah.
different property. So you go click, and you generate a let's say a review or a just
Mhm.
itinerary, excuse me, of how you might use that property for that use case. So why not,
Mhm.
right? Like I think that the more
Mhm.
we can sell it to that person, here's the value use case of this property, the more we can personalize it, the better. One thing I'm very bullish on that I'm considering with a client right now is, can we get a little more information while they're doing the date search? So right now we just ask for dates, but if
Mhm.
we could build enough trust, could I get a little bit more information from them? Don't just tell me who's coming, tell me why you're coming. And then could I then tailor or customize the properties that I suggest to you based on what you gave me? Even if you give me a one sentence or a two-sentence description, I can probably recommend a lot better listings to you than if I just know, hey, this is what's available on, June 24th to the 28th or whatever your dates were that you entered. So very bullish on that. And I think that's kind of the direction we're headed in for sure.
That's interesting. When I was a reservation agent, once I got comfortable doing it, I used to just go in to pick up the phone call and I'd be like, "What's the story? Why are you coming?"
I like
Right?
that. Yeah.
And then you could get the dates and then you could kind of fit that. So it's kind of gone full circle in 30 years.
Yeah, yeah, I like that actually a lot. Yeah, and why not? Could you not see a future where an AI agent is
Yeah.
the one reaching out to you or calling you and
Yeah.
saying, "Hey Ben, it's been 2 years since you've came here to the States to
Yeah.
Florida. We'd love to have you
Yeah.
back. Is there any reason,
Yeah.
for your travel or you want to come back?" And the
Yeah.
answer may be no, or there may be, "Oh, you know what? We have thought about it before. We're just talking about it. Could you call me back
Yeah.
in 2 days?" And my
Yeah.
wife and I will talk about it by then. The AI agent would go,
Yeah.
"Yeah, happy to do that. I'll call you back in two
Yeah.
days, no problem." So
Cool.
awesome. Well, Ben, I know our time here, and for you and the lovely folks at Jetstream, you offered something
Mhm.
cool to folks who are coming in and attending and watching the webinar. So maybe give a quick kind of breakdown of what it's like to work with you and Jetstream, and then I'll do a slide on that, and then we'll let folks depart for today.
Absolutely. I just want to thank you, Conrad. It's been a pleasure to be with you today and the people who've joined. We're in it for the long term with our partners. So as we were talking earlier, those first few bookings, they may not be perfect. And we're happy to talk to you. We're very friendly and approachable, get you going. And then we're in it for the long term. So the first 10 bookings, are free of all fees, because we're committed to getting that momentum. It really is a momentum machine, and we're a long-term company. So if anyone wants to reach out, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'll put a link, by the way, Ben, in the show notes, or like below this video if you're watching the
Yeah,
recording later on, and folks can do that. And then, obviously, I'll send the list over to you, Ben, and people can check that out. I mentioned at the top of the call the book that I worked on back in 2022. I think a lot of what we talked about, today, kind of talks about some of the concepts and the pieces, the marketing tactics that we covered in the book. If you would like a copy of the book, if you're in the States, I can send you a physical copy to your mailing address of choice. So just let me know that. If you're elsewhere, international, haven't figured out that international shipping quite yet. It's a little bit trickier than you would assume. Happy to send you a PDF copy so you can, watch it on your device or go through it on your device. So just email me bonus@conrad@buildupbookings.com. Just email that to me, bonus or bonus book or something like that. And then that'll get triaged and I can send that out to you. Obviously, if you're in the US and you want a physical copy, please do include your address. Otherwise, I'm just going to reply and say, give me your address. Otherwise, I'll give you the PDF copy from there. So again, we'll end on Ben's promo panel here for Jetstream. Thank you, Ben, for hopping on. Really appreciate it. Obviously, we've had a handful of discussions, off camera, off recording, not only about this, but other ventures, and looking forward to
yeah.
seeing
Thank you, Conrad.
what BuildUp and Jetstream can do in the future. So thanks so much, Ben. Appreciate it. Have an awesome rest of your
Awesome.
day.
Thank you. Cheers.
Yep. Yes, indeed. Bye-bye.